Okay, so today we're looking at Doctor Who The Eternity Clock. This was developed by Supermassive Games and published by BBC Worldwide and Sony Computer Entertainment. It was released on PlayStation 3 in May 2012, PlayStation Vita in October 2012, and eventually came to PC on the 15th of November 2012. It is an action-adventure platforming puzzle game. That's the best way I can summarise it. And it is single player, but is also a co-op story that you can play split screen, which for the bulk of this video is what I have done. Except it was just, yeah, you'll see. You'll see.
Now, look, I know that navigating a temporal maelstrom is less than ideal, but if you could just calm down about it,
We can work this out. Trust me. I'm the Doctor.
Okay, so let's just start off with the plot, because frankly that's probably the best part of this entire game. So the Doctor and River Song travel across space and time in an effort to save Earth by gathering pieces of the Eternity Clock. It's an object that is a record of everything that has or will ever happen in the entirety of existence. Along your journey you'll encounter Daleks, Cybermen, Silurians and the Silence. Both Matt Smith and Alex Kingston came back to reprise their roles as the Doctor and River Song, which is very cool to see, and there was some cool motion capture behind the scenes stuff that went on for this.
There's a moment where he talks about the TARDIS being a very good girl. She's done something brilliant, and he really likes what she's done. The way he did it was he kisses the console.
she's a very good girl.
We just didn't expect him to do it. It's a completely unique performance, and that is the beauty of having the real actor playing the Doctor. You get the Doctor.
Anyway, really, that's probably the most positive thing I have to say about this game. The performances from Matt Smith and Alex Kingston are great, as they are in the show. As a Doctor Who fan, especially as a big fan of 11, it's really cool to see those cutscenes shine and see how well the motion capture's been done, especially for the time. However, it's just a shame that the actual game itself falls so short. It was a technical mess, and even with some of the bugs fixed, it's just not very fun at all. Now, I know last week I said some bad things about Pokemon Dash. Now, that game wasn't too bad, and I know it has its defenders, but I would be very surprised if one of you pull up in these comments and starts defending this game, calling it great. That's all I'm saying.
And I did it because I liked it. Hell, I loved it. I'm sitting here, I'm just itching. I'm itching to do it again. And you think what? You think you're gonna send me to a nut house?
Now, as to where this game fits in the Doctor Who timeline, if you've watched the show before, then you'll know that River and the Doctor's timelines go in different directions. So for River, this game takes place just before the events of the Silence in the Library and the Forest of the Dead. Now, as for the Doctor, it's not quite as specific, but it's at some point after the midpoint of Series 6. But the key point is, it's not too long before two very defining moments in these characters' histories. Alright, well let's start off with my gripes about this game. First of all, it didn't need to be 2D. I don't think Doctor Who translates very well into a 2D platformer. This would have been much better as a kind of 3D, not open world, but level based adventure platformer. Still with some platforming elements, but there was no reason for this to be an uninspired side-scrolling 2D platformer. This actually does cause some issues down the line, as because the game puts you on a single 2D plane, it makes it quite hard to identify where enemies are in relation to where you are. Say, you'll have Cybermen shooting at you from the background, but you'll be in the front, and you can't really see where those Cybermen are. Not that well. Now, that aside, as a platformer, it's just so janky. It just doesn't feel nice to control. The jumping is off. There's sections where you have to, like, jump between two sections, like jumping up between two different platforms, up and up and up, and my god, it's just not done well at all. Nothing about it is fluid. There's a lot of running around, but there's none of the fun of running around in the show. This game is just like mindless. I was just sat there with the most deadpan expression. And the only thing that breaks it up is occasional remarks from Matt Smith, which is always nice to hear, but it really doesn't make up for the fact that this game is just a mess. The sounds in the game, they're very mixed. Some of the soundtrack has obviously just been pulled straight from the show, with pieces like I Am the Doctor and Down to Earth just from Series 5. The dialogue from the characters, again, fantastic, but there's just some weird sound design choices that just get really irritating after a while. They just don't sound good. Just listen to this, for example. There was one section of the game where that creaking sound just then played repetitively for like a good 5 or 10 minutes with no music at all. Oh my god, I was losing my mind. Speaking of which, the game, although it was patched a fair bit, is still quite buggy. There's a lot of scripting issues where dialogue and certain cutscenes just don't trigger, and sometimes they trigger way too late. If you're playing single player, River tends to get stuck on ladders and doorways, and you just have to restart the levels. It's very frustrating. When it works, this game is actually, it's not bad, but the bugginess, the jankiness, the poor audio, a lot of it, it's just not what a Doctor Who game should have been. And it's such a shame that this was not as good as it could have been. Now, I do believe that the collaboration between Supermassive Games and the BBC, it was very well intentioned. You could tell everyone involved was passionate about the project. I just don't think that the care and finesse and maybe the budget, it just wasn't there.
Oh, yes, that is good. That is brilliant. Oh, I'm getting that too. That is brilliant.
Now, it is worth noting that when this game released, it was still very early days for Supermassive Games. They were only founded in 2008, and they were a second-party developer to Sony. Now, they hadn't worked on much at this point. In fact, the first thing they did work on was downloadable content for Little Big Planet, and then they just had a few PlayStation Move games, which, as I'm sure you know, isn't the best peripheral on planet Earth. So, outside of these, Doctor Who The Eternity Clock was one of the first big games they'd actually worked on. And at the time of its release, sticking with the fact they were a second-party developer for Sony, Doctor Who was a PSN download exclusive on the PlayStation 3. Only for a few months, but that's still pretty cool, and there was a lot riding on it. Now, we all know that Supermassive Games would then go on to work on Until Dawn and the Dark Pictures anthology, and they're currently due to release Little Nightmares 3 quite soon, so they've gone on to do some good stuff. It's just interesting to see that they started with downloadable content and Doctor Who. Okay, I know I've moaned a lot this video, but bear with me just a little bit longer. I'm nearly finished. So the other thing I want to call out for this game is the puzzles, in inverted commas, because some of them aren't actually puzzles, they're just glorified mini-games. They're very mixed. Some of them are not well explained at all. The tutorial, it shows sometimes you can't even read what's on the screen because the colouring is just so stupid that you can't see it. You're just going to have to make it up as you go. And then you'll find that you'll discover one type of puzzle on a level you're on, and then they will just repeat that puzzle over and over again, and half the time, the solution for all of those puzzles is the exact same. It's very strange. And if you play it on hard mode, all it really does is just decreases the amount of time you have to complete these puzzles. It doesn't actually make the puzzle any more challenging, it just makes it more frustrating with how janky the game is, so don't play it on hard mode. Speaking of the game just being very unclear, there was one section of the game where you're in this 4-story building in present day and Cybermen are trying to get into the building, and it's not very clear what you're supposed to do. Now, I was playing this in co-op, so I, as the Doctor, was in a completely different time zone, shall we say, doing some other thing, and my sibling was playing as River. And what you're supposed to do is wait for the Cybermen to climb to the top of these 4 stories and get into this room you couldn't get into previously, and then somehow you have to get in the room once the Cybermen have gone, and it's very unclear, and the issue is it literally takes them like 3 minutes to get to the top of there. So if you get caught after you've done this, it will just put you straight back to the beginning, so you have to wait another 3 minutes for them to climb up again. The checkpoints are very sadistic in that sense, so it's just, yeah, there's a lot of polish that needs to go into this before it can be a good game. Now, this game has actually become one of the increasingly large number of games being lost to the digital ether. It was delisted from Steam around May 2017, and then it was delisted on PS3 across the Australian and European territories no later than October 2020. Weirdly, the PlayStation Vita release seems to still be available, but other than that, the only way to get this is the physical copy, which was released exclusively in Europe. Now, the reason behind this delisting appears to be the same as a lot of other games. The license of the Doctor Who property just expired, because the adventure games for Doctor Who were also delisted in 2017. Sad times. Very sad times. Shame the games aren't that good, but sad times nonetheless. Now, The Eternity Clock was supposed to be the first of a 3-part series, but for obvious reasons which I'm sure you've learned today, this was the only one that actually made it out the gates. And with that sad note, that takes us to the end of our look at Doctor Who The Eternity Clock. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please don't forget to press like, subscribe, tap the bell for notifications and all the usual stuff, and I will see you all in the next video.
If you want orders, follow this one. Kill yourself.